Okay, here we go. So part two of the look at the wreck of the B.S.M Pandora. So as I did with the mushroom eaters video, I'm only going to film parts, and for this one the parts that I film will probably be less. I just kind of want to give you an overview of the game. It's been a little bit of, like I said, I think I've played now 3 times on my own. It's taken a little bit to kind of slog my way through the rules. These kind of games, since they're so new to me, a lot of the terminology and a lot of the way they explain the rules and a lot of the ideas behind it are a little difficult because I haven't grown up with this style of game. So it took me a while, and that's the other bonus of being on this BGG forum. Or just website period. In the forums there's been some really great questions and people have answered it, and then also some of the files that I found, especially I should give a shout out to a guy, Jeffrey Bass, Skygazer I believe is his name on the site. I think that's his name from the BGG site. Did a great kind of cheat sheet and house rules that really helped as well. Once I had read through the rules a few times and watched a little bit of videos and read some of the forum, I found that really helped with just giving me enough information. I'll just kind of show you briefly. So for example, on this first page is step 1 and step 2 of your action, of your actions. So and it just gives you kind of the highlights, and then if you want to read more, it gives you the section where you can read more details, like this first one you can read in section 9.6, etc. all the way through. So it's been really helpful in that respect. So it's 2 pages of that, and then Skygazer's clarifications, reminders, and additional house rules. So there's reminders about things like rigs and stun bombs, bot independence, repair protocol, wake up confusion, rounding, etc., how to pick up tools and things. And then it goes to the house rules, where he suggests other ways of playing and other rules that he's kind of implemented for parts that he and many other people feel don't necessarily work about the game. They've just kind of given you hint points of what they or how they end up playing it. So the basic premise of the game is an interesting one that's caused, again, another reading of it. This was the first game. There was another one that came out called The Voyage of the B.S.M Pandora, and from what I understand, from what I know about it, it was the Pandora exploring a solar system and jumping from planet to planet to explore the different terrains and try to discover and bring back some alien life forms, some more hostile than the others, some a lot more tame. They were then put onto the Pandora, and on their voyage home everybody was in like sleep stasis or whatever. The ship had flown too near a star that was emitting powerful bursts of near ultraviolet radiation. Pandora's computer had placed the ship too close to the pulse, and the results are catastrophic. All over the ship, electronic components are burned out, systems begin to fail, first the primaries, then the backups. So the idea is that all this stuff started going wrong with the ship. Everybody was brought out of stasis. Some of the crew died. You're one of 5 people that were alive, but you come out of it with no short-term memory, and that's kind of how they explain the discovery aspect of the game, where you're supposed to go pod by pod to look for these different systems to bring back online, find these aliens and recapture them. Try not to kill them, but sometimes you end up killing them. Try to recapture them and bring the ship back home in one piece. And I guess for some people that was a bit of a stretch. If you've spent all this time on this ship, how would it possibly be the case that you're going to forget everything? And they found it a little bit of a stretch. So what happened in Stargazers here is he proposed an alternative scenario, which is the wake-up confusion. And his take on it was that all B.S.M class spaceships are made of pods, and each ship is arranged in a custom fashion for each mission. The crew members in the game are not the original assigned crew, but are passenger crew members hitching a ride on the Pandora after returning from another mission in another similar ship. When our heroes awake, they find that the originally assigned Pandora crew is dead or incapacitated. Our heroes inherit the task of trying to bring under control the chaos of a ship, the Pandora, in which its systems and components are well known, but its layout is not. And either one is fine with me. I prefer that one. I think that one's a little better. Either one, though, has no bearing on my enjoyment of the game. It's not that overwhelming to me. So, that said, you have to discover each of these pods. Now we have these tokens here, 21 different pod tokens. These are upside down, and you just randomly place them around the board. So I will do that. And these are what you're going to be traveling to discover and hopefully find the systems to make the ship operational again. When you discover things, there's certain die rolls that you do where you see if the piece of equipment is functional or if it's broken and you have to fix it. If you do have to fix it, there's only certain tools or certain robots that are capable of fixing it. So the rest of the game is making sure that everything is in a good state of repair and operational before you try to start the ship. So that's kind of how the layout starts there. Then you have 31 various tokens of weapons, kits, sort of armor, I guess, robots, and the critters as well, like the Golem, for example, who has some really major abilities there. Add 3 to each dice roll for its attributes. So all of these go into a Mighty Thor cup or whatever you may have. And this all becomes a random draw. So as you're going room to room, one of the other things you do when you enter a room is you do a dice roll or a 1 die roll. If it's 1, 2, or 3, that's how many counters you'll pick out of this to put in the room with you. 4, 5, or 6 means that the room is empty and you're good to go. So that's another kind of random aspect of as far as discovering each of these pods and figuring out where you are and getting your bearings. You might just enter a room with 3 creatures, which has happened to me in a game and completely annihilated me. So that's that basic setup. In this example today, I'm just going to play a 2-player game, a solo 2-player game. Each player has 2 tokens, one that lives on one of the tracks up there and another that you maneuver through the game board. I won't talk about these tokens over here yet, they'll come into play. So Stroff and Jeopardus are the 2 players that I'm going to be playing. And as you can see, all these attributes are blank. So this is the part of the game where you just spend a lot of time rolling dice, referring to charts, that one there especially, and filling in the blanks to find out what your strengths and weaknesses are. I'll give you one quick example before I move on. So impair, shield, port, and speed, you roll 2 dice. Repair and weight, it's only a 1 die roll. Another thing that Skygazer put in his house rules was to make it a little more interesting and making sure you have a moderately stronger character. He suggests doing 2 die rolls for each category and taking the highest one. After the last time that I played, I think I would agree with that. I ended up getting some horrible rolls and had some really low numbers, and it just made for not a fun game at all because I died fairly quick. It was a little more excruciating, so I think I might implement that rule myself now. 2 die rolls for each, and then filling in the blanks. So I'll just roll for the first couple to give you a sense, and then I'll do a little cut and we'll go from there. So I'm going to roll for the repair and weight attributes first, which is 1 die, and I'll show you how that goes there. So a 2 and a 4. So we'll take the 4. It's harder to see because, like I said, this whole chart was color and I was only able to print it out in black and white. So 1 to 3 gives you an attribute level of 1. A 4 gives you an attribute level of 2. A 5, it gives you a 3, and goes all the way to, if you roll an 11 and 12 for other ones where it's 2 die, you get an attribute level of 9, which is the maximum. So for this one, we have an attribute of 2 for repair, which is pretty good. And all that does is refer to this table over here. So your attribute of 2, the attribute number is across the top. It goes up to 9 because various other creatures and robots and stuff have higher numbers. A player's one can only go to 3. And then down the left-hand column there, you roll a dice, and whichever number you just cross-reference. So for a 2, it's only a 5 and a 6 that will give you an extra, a 1 level of repair, I guess. 2, 3, and 4 give you nothing. A 1 does damage, which is very important too, and I think that's what happened in my last game. Both of my players were a 1, so there was more chance of causing more damage as opposed to fixing anything. So we'll see how this plays out. And then we'll go to the weight, and again, that's just a 1 die roll. Ooh, a horrible 1. Let's hope we get something better. Well, a 3 isn't much better, but that's okay. That just means that, oh sorry, wrong chart. So a 3 gives us a 1. So this is just how much this person weighs. Everybody will have a port number, and that's how much they can carry. So if you need to drag one of your stunned, carry one of your stunned teammates to a pod that you've discovered that's kind of a medi pod to help heal them, then at least they're light enough that you can carry them if you happen to be carrying other items like weapons and things. So that gives you kind of a basic, I'll just do all the rolls, fill in all the blanks, and put the players on their starting points, and I will come back and fill you in on what's happened. Okay, so all the rolls have been finished, and I did fairly well actually. So impair goes to the impair total, which is how much damage you're going to do to somebody. The maximum on that table is 7, so to have a 6 and an 8 is pretty amazing. That's going to give me some really major hit points against various creatures. Shield 6 and 8, repair 2 and 3, so Jeopardus got the highest, which was pretty nice. That'll definitely change his repair ability, although this guy's a big mother. He's 3, he's the heaviest, so that's going to cause some issues. Their amount they can carry, 6 and 7, is pretty good as well. Not horrible. So that was a die roll of 8 and 9. And then their speed, Stroff is really fast at an 8. Jeopardus is fairly quick, 2 at a 5, and this comes into play with another house rule about evading critters. If your speed is higher than theirs, one of the house rules is that you can escape the room, which comes in handy, especially if you're doing what's called a hasty movement. In a normal game, you can only move 1 room at a time, so 1 room per turn. Wait till your next turn, move 1 room. There's an ability, a hasty movement, where you can go 1, 2, a maximum of 2 spaces, or not a maximum, just 2 spaces. But as you're running through rooms, if there's creatures already there, you still trigger them because you've been in the room, so they can still, with some die rolls and stuff, they still might be able to attack you. if your speed happens to be higher than theirs and they do choose to attack you, one of the house rules is that you can evade them by just keep running and go through to the next room, which is pretty good. So you'll see where they've started on the board. That's decided by rolling the dice as well. So basically, let's see if we get one here. So a 2 and a 6. So 2 designates the level, and then 6 designates the pod. So in this case, that would be B6 right there. So that's where the starting place would be for that one. So again, just a random starting area. So that's the basics of the game right off of the boot. So now what we'll do is we'll get into the gameplay itself for a little bit. I'll take you through the first couple of movements each, and then there will be a big gap while I do some playing and come back and fill you in. Another house rule there's I think 4 different phases of your action. 4 different phases per action per player. One of the other house rules is that instead of having one player do all 4 of their phases and then moving to the next player, it's suggested that to keep gameplay flowing a little more, player 1, which in this case will be Stroff here just because that's the order that they're listed on the paper. Player 1 does step 1, then player 2 does step 1, player 3 or player 1 does step 2, etc. And that I think comes more into play as you get further into the game when there's more things happening. Some of the things you can do in that certain step of the phase might end up helping the other player achieve a goal. So I think that makes it even more of a cooperative game, because at the base of it, it is a cooperative game. You are working together to try to get this ship up and running. Obviously, you're trying to be the one who finds that last pod with that last computer system to bring the ship online so you can get those points. But throughout it, you can work together. If you, for example, have stunned a critter that you can't carry on your own to one of the containment pods, you can have another player come and help you, and you can distribute the weight of that between the 2 of you, drag them to the containment pod, and then split the victory points. Because I believe, as I said, if you contain a critter or kill a critter, you get points. You get more points if you contain them. You get half the points if you kill them. And the points are determined again by a dice roll. So if I rolled a 6, I'd get 6 victory points for containing that beast, and I'd get 3 for killing it, because you just divide it in 2. And in the case of if we were dividing, say, that 3 between 2 of us, you'd just round up. Instead of getting a 1.5 points each, you just get 2 points each, so you just round it up. What else can I tell you before we start here? The phases are fairly important. There's been I've read some things about, once you get more familiar with the game, what order you do your actions in doesn't necessarily spoil the game. I'm kind of I'm the kind of person that I like that idea. I like playing it out as they've written it as far as the phase order. So I mean, even doing 1 and then 1 and then 2 and 2, 3 and 3 is a little out of my comfort zone. The first 3 games I played them by the book. So player 1 did all the actions, player 2 did all their actions, then we went back to player 1 and started all over again. So I'm going to try it out this other way for the sake of this video, just for something different. But I do like following things step by step. I find it's, especially again with a game like this, like for example, if you look, this whole column here are your choices for your movement phase, and things that happen in this section is basically things that happen based on stuff that's happened here. So there's a lot to remember. I find myself referring to this a lot, which is why it sits right beside me, just because I need those reminders of what exactly it was I could do within each step of my actions. So especially when it comes to a game like this, I prefer the do this first, then do this first, then do this first, then do this first, just because in my head it just helps it stick a little more and makes things a little clearer, and I don't get as confused with what I've done and what I haven't done. And that's part of it that kind of, I'll just interject with this, that's part of it that makes this game bog down for me just a little bit. Especially in my last game that I played, I found that it just slowed down the game at points. Now, that's partially due to the fact that, again, this is only the 4th time I've played it, but I think it's also just due to the fact that the amount of things there are to remember and read through, and then once you get into the characters and all their this one here, all their numbers, and remembering what those numbers are, and doing the die rolls, and making sure you're doing the fighting properly, and it does tend to slow it down a little bit. It's probably something that will pick up for me, but as I said, if I want to get into some more of these token or chit playing war type games, I think this is very, very basic if you compared it to some of these other games that are out there that I'm curious in trying out. So I think this is maybe a good introduction to that whole world, or that whole idea of turn order and stuff like that, and movement and all those things. So the first step of phase 1, we'll go through this, and then I'll probably just pause the video, and that can be part 2. Actually, you know what? I'll pause it there, and I'll kind of read through and refamiliarize myself with stuff, and then I'll come back in part 3, and then we'll actually see the turn order and the different phases of your action.